I actually went to the market recently, and I wanted to buy tomatoes, and by the time it was put together and ground, and I was like, this is watery. And the woman selling said that there are no tomatoes in the market, that they're just going to plant them right now. So it just goes to show that perhaps we are beginning to plant. Now, I'm just going to stick to agriculture, but non-food this time around. What are those non-food components that actually drove the numbers for April?
Okay, the major one is in the building and construction. That's the prices of cement and building materials. At this point of at this time of the year, also when the rain starts, you see people going to do other things rather than construct buildings and
other things.
Yeah,
what other things?
Other things like probably invest in something else, do some other trade, import some things until the rains are over before they continue their.
So, construction was put on hold for most parts for many people.
For many people,
and okay.
Yeah. So, and that was a major factor, and other factors are basically cost of transportation increases because the volume of things transported at this point in time has been reduced because of the rains and things like that.
Okay, Damilola, do we also consider infrastructure deficit is also one of the things that perhaps would have impacted on the inflation figure? Because, like Raphael was trying to explain, when you're trying to move your goods from one place to the other and the roads are bad, does that add to the cost of transportation and also trickle down to the inflation figures?
The infrastructure deficit has always been there for quite a while, and obviously it would impact or affect productivity levels because if the roads are bad and all that, you spend more time on the road, you spend more time doing things, and also part of the infrastructure deficit is also power, and which is a major issue in Nigeria also. So that has affected inflation figures over the years, but I won't say it was significant in the April inflation figures. It was more of the variables that affected were actually more of cost push and demand pull factors like the growth in money supply, also the currency weakness, marginal currency weakness in that month.
All right, I'm just looking at the slides now, and there's something from urban and national inflation. Could you just throw more light into that, Damilola?
Okay, yes. Like I mentioned, one of the measures or tools that we use in coming up with our data or forecasting tool is our urban inflation survey. So we go out to the markets and we price various products, both in the food and non-food index. And there's been a trend between the headline inflation and the FDC urban inflation trend. So if you look at the chart, you can see that there's an upward movement. While the urban inflation trend is higher, the national one is around 7 to 8%, but the trend is still the same thing. And that's what the FDC's figure just measures is one market in Lagos. It just targets one market. Meanwhile, the headline covers, it's on the national coverage and all. So there is a trend between what our figures say and the national headline inflation.
Okay, Raphael, we have an insecurity challenges in the northeast of Nigeria, and that's in some part of Nigeria.
Yes.
And some of the agricultural products come from the north.
Yes.
Does this in any way have any form of impact on it, on what we're getting right now in terms of inflation figures?
For now,
no.
There has not been any impact. We've not seen the impact of what is going on in the northeast and in the north in general on consumer prices. However, we can't categorically say that we are not seeing the impact, because if there were no insecurity in the north, or there is no insecurity in the north, probably inflation rates will have been down. Maybe food inflation will have been lower than what it is presently. But we can't really say that, because we are moving from a high inflation rate of 12%, and then we have food inflation rate of about 15% down to about 9.4% at present. So it's still a welcome development, at least for policymakers.
Okay. Damilola, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank will be meeting next week. And one of the things that was stated here in terms of the likely causes of inflation is monetary supply, increased money supply, the medium increment and all that. What do you think? Inflation figures so far, I know that that's one of the yardsticks that one of the things that the central bank or the committee itself considers before it arrives at the decision for the quarter or for the month. What role will this be playing in that regard?
Well, because the increase was marginal and all that, it's not going to be that significant in determining the outcome of the MPC's decision. If at all, they will be considering other issues like the growth in money supply, like the depletion of the external reserves and all. So for this month, at least for next week, the inflation figures aren't going to play that major role. But in coming meetings, depending on the trend in inflation rate and all that, it's going to play a more significant role. But for next week, it's not going to be that significant. That's because of the marginal increase. And the trend, at least for May, June, is to be anticipate a flat growth in inflation rate.
Raphael, do you have anything to say to that?
Just in addition to that, the inflation rate is within the band, just as you mentioned earlier. It's within the band of the target for the year. And so that is not going to, inflation is not going to be a major concern for them. Also, looking at other variables that they look at, and what they've been trying to drive at since the turn of the year, currency stability and external reserve depletion, those things seem to be working well at present and responding to the previous monetary policy position. So at this point or by next week, we don't expect any major changes in monetary policy.
Let's look at the outlook. We are in May, and half of May is gone, really. What should we be looking at?
Okay, if you look at the causes of inflation right now, wage pressure, that is non-existent. Growth in money supply has been marginal. If you look at electricity costs, they've been low and medium, and power costs have been low. So for the month of May, the factors, what we'll be looking at would be the currency implication, because we've seen renewed demand pressure. We'll be looking at also the depletion of external reserves. So how that would affect or impact the decision next week. The consensus view is that they're going to maintain a status quo on policy rates. But I would say we shouldn't also close out the possibility of further tightening next week. So that's for May. Then in June, if there's the automotive policy is yet to be conclusive, although that talks about it being affected in June. If there's a tariff also in June, all this would impact on inflation rate, and we might see a higher increase. And there's a higher increase in inflation rate, then it's going to play a more significant role in the decision-making process.
Raphael, do you have a contrary view?
No, there's no contrary view. The reason is that all the variables that the MPC would consider are in good territory. There are no volatility on this rate. So at this point, we are not expecting any significant increase in consumer prices. So I guess the monetary policy will just committee, they will just maintain status quo, except there is an unexpected spike in demand for the foreign currencies.
All right, I think this is where we have to put a stop to this conversation. Thank you for coming on the program. Damilola Akinbami, an economist with financial derivatives, also is Raphael Yemitan. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. And on that note, we'll come to the end of Business Morning, this Friday's edition. We do appreciate your time as well, our viewers. Meantime, you can also watch this edition on channelstv.com. You can look at this edition if you have missed it. And of course, we expect you to also tune in on Monday morning to have another round of conversation. Thank you very much for watching. I am Bolaji Akiwale. Bye.